Hey everyone! For those of you who don't know, I had a real tough time getting this kill count approved by YouTube because of the graphic nature of Reanimator. Even though I censored pretty much everything, for a minute there it looked like I'd have to release it completely demonetized, which would be a big bummer for me and my editing team who spent a lot of time working on it. Then Movement came to the rescue. Movement, spelled MVMT, ended up being the MVPs, since they reached out to me and offered to sponsor this video. That means I get to release it, along with the explicit version, for free, while we at Dead Meat still get compensated for our work. I guess you could say they reanimated this kill count for everyone to enjoy. Maybe they reached out to me because they know how hard it is to start a business, since Movement was founded by two broke college kids who liked stylish watches that they just couldn't afford. Now they make their own watches that are high quality but affordable, with sleek, minimalistic designs. They also sell sunglasses and other accessories for men and women, like their blue light blocker glasses Everscroll, which are designed to help protect your eyes while you spend hours staring at a screen. Like, you know, when you're editing a half-hour-long kill count. So check out their products and show them some thanks by going to mvmt.com/deadmeat, which will give you a 15% discount at checkout. That's a nice discount. That's mvmt.com/deadmeat for a 15% discount at Movement, the company that brought the Reanimator kill count back to life. Thanks, Movement. You can watch the explicit version of this video by clicking up there or by following the link in the video description. Or you can watch the tamer blurred version by not doing a gosh darn thing, since it's starting in 5, 4, Welcome to the Kill Count, where we tally up the victims in all our favorite horror movies. I'm James A. Janice, and today we're looking at another one of my personal favorites, Reanimator, released in 1985. Based on a serialized short story written in the 1920s by H.P. Lovecraft, Reanimator is the first film made by Stuart Gordon and Brian Yuzna, two science fiction-y body horror filmmakers who are responsible for a litany of cult classics. Though so far, their only work to get kill counted has been Yuzna's Silent Night Deadly Night 4 Initiation, that real weird cult one with all the witches and the bugs. Reanimator, which probably remains the best film made by either of these two gentlemen, was directed by Stuart Gordon, who had come from a background in theater. In fact, he was so unfamiliar with how film sets work that he had to be guided and helped by his director of photography, Mac Ahlberg, an awesome Swedish cinematographer who would go on to shoot 6 more of Gordon's films, including From Beyond, which featured some of the stars of Reanimator. Although he was new to filmmaking, Gordon and producer Brian Yuzna knew exactly what they wanted to accomplish with Reanimator. Their goal was to push the boundaries of the genre and make a movie as gory and sexual as possible. And spoiler alert, they fucking succeeded. In fact, Reanimator is so fantastically graphic that it was released unrated, since the filmmakers knew the MPAA would have a shit fit over everything happening on screen.
I didn't like the idea of somebody telling us what we could or couldn't do with it.
Obviously, that means I'll have to censor a bunch of stuff to appease the YouTube gods, but seriously, go watch this movie if you've never seen it and you want to see all the gore. You will not be disappointed. And it's not just the gore that makes this movie one of my favorites. It's also the pitch black comedy that I find absolutely hilarious. And the comedy doesn't come from a script that's trying to be funny either. It owes more to the incredible cast and the way they play their characters with the perfect amount of camp. Gordon cast a bunch of theater actors in these roles, and everyone does a fantastic job. The 3 leads in particular have standout chemistry, with Bruce Abbott portraying an idealistic but naive leading man in Dan Kane, and Barbara Crampton giving a ton of strength and intelligence to Megan Halsey, a role that could have easily been a forgettable and powerless girlfriend character. But it's Jeffrey Combs, as the brilliant but arrogant anti-hero Herbert West, who steals the show. Combs plays West with perfect B-movie camp, and would reprise the role for this movie's 2 sequels, Bride of Reanimator and Beyond Reanimator, which we'll be looking at over the next couple of weeks. And although this is his first time on the kill count, Mr. Combs will not be a stranger to horror and sci-fi fans, having performed lead and cameo roles in a ridiculous number of horror films, as well as various characters throughout multiple Star Trek series. I also have a personal story I like to tell about Jeffrey Combs. When I was 16 years old, I went to Motor City Comic Con in Detroit, and although I had no money for an autograph or a picture, Jeff was happy to take a photo with me free of charge. I told him this story when I met him again 14 years later at Texas Frightmare, where he was just as courteous and sharp-witted as ever. It's an interaction that's always stuck with me, and I'm really grateful to have had it. But as we'll see, Herbert West is not the genial guy that Jeffrey Combs is. He's out to find the secret of reversing death and will stop at literally nothing to perfect his experiments. He's the ultimate uncompromising mad scientist who corrupts everyone and everything around him. And man, is it a delight to watch him weasel his way out of every sticky situation he ends up causing for himself. Those situations invariably involve lots of blood and naked zombies. And as far as the zombies go, for this series I'm gonna try and count the reanimated beings as separate kills if they die. My reasoning is that even if we already counted a kill when their original life ended, West's reagent gives them a new life, one that can be newly counted if they're killed again. I'll probably end up regretting that decision though. How many bodies, fresh or reanimated, will we see drop dead in Reanimator? Let's find out and get to the kills. The movie begins at Universitat Zurich, an institute for medicine. There's a ruckus going on in Dr. Gruber's room, and when the university staff breaks in to see what's going on, they find a squirrely Herbert West leaning over the doctor's body. We're only a minute into this movie, but Reanimator wants you to be into it, so it kicks off with a gruesome kill when a reanimated Dr. Gruber dies right in front of all these terrified people, his eyes bubbling up like face cauldrons before bursting a stream of blood into this poor lady's face. Damn! This kill, part of the tone-setting cold open that Brian Yuzna came up with, was executed by the late horror mainstay John Buechler, who used inflatable bladders and blood tubes to achieve this nasty and memorable effect. Yuzna's cold open also succeeds in showing the audience exactly the type of person Herbert West is after only 2 lines of dialogue.
Of course he's dead. The dosage was too large.
You killed him.
No, I did not. I gave him life.
And some glow sticks gave life to this title card. Hey, wasn't that guy like super racist? The opening credits, which were designed by Robert Dawson, who would go on to make pretty much all of Tim Burton's opening credits, feature a bunch of neon science diagrams and a motherfucking bop of a theme, composed by Richard Band and performed by the Rome Philharmonic. No, you're not hearing things. It is basically Bernard Herrmann's Psycho theme with an added disco flair. Apparently some people have gotten upset about this, but Richard Band has always acknowledged that he purposefully used that music as a base to build this theme upon.
That was not something I was trying to hide. It was just the opposite. I wanted to make it so obvious that everybody would go, wow, what is this?
I think it's awesome, especially the original additions that Band wrote, like this bitch and oboe part. At Miskatonic Med School in Arkham, Massachusetts, med student Handsome Dan Kane tries to resuscitate a patient, even though his fellow attendant, Dr. Herod, played by Stuart Gordon's wife and co-worker, Carolyn Purdy Gordon, tells him it's too late.
She's gone.
She's right, of course, and despite Dan's persistence, he's unable to prevent the woman from dying.
She just needs a little more time for the drugs to circulate.
Dude, if you're looking for drugs for the dead, I've got the perfect creepy scientist for you to meet. Oh, and here he is now. Kane meets Herbert West in the hospital's morgue, which, yeah, has a bunch of dead bodies in it, but they were dead before this movie's story began, so I won't be counting them, unless they get reanimated and then killed again, no matter how handsy they are while dead. Also, fun fact, to help his actors prepare for their roles, Stuart Gordon took them on a field trip to an actual morgue so they could see real dead bodies up close. It was very effective for all of them, especially Jeffrey Combs.
When you see a dead body, it is a dead thing, and it makes you realize just how magical this idea is, how truly incredible it would be if someone could bring the dead back to life.
Introducing the young med students to each other is the dean of the school, Alan Halsey, who also introduces West to the school's top brain researcher, Dr. Carl Hill. But West already knows of and has no love for Dr. Hill. He claims that he's a plagiarist whose theories are outdated crap.
And your support of the 12-minute limit on the life of the brainstem after death.
6 to 12 minutes, Mr.
West. Herbert West.
Turns out that Dan is not only the dean's favorite student, he's also engaged to the dean's daughter, Megan Halsey.
No. 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 Yes.
Yeah, and they making flippy floppy on the regs. At least until Dan's cat Rufus tells him to knock it off. Megan Halsey is played by Barbara Crampton, star of 1,000 horror movies including Chopping Mall and You're Next, and this is probably her most well-known film role. She and Dan giggle around and start up a mean game of Ghost Sheet Gon' Get Ya until they're interrupted by Herbert West, who's here inquiring about Dan's room for rent. They let West inside, and after one look at the building's basement, he's champing at the bit to move in. Megan's weirdo senses go off, and she asks West why he left Switzerland in the first place.
There was no more I could learn there.
But there ain't nothing weird about that wad of cash he hands over, so Dan the man agrees to make Herbert his new roomie. The next day, during a lesson, Dr. Hill revels in this movie's gore effects, which, in addition to John Carl Buechler, were also created by John Nolan and Anthony Dublin. Stuart Gordon had them research anatomy textbooks and dissection manuals in order to accomplish the most medically accurate gore possible. And they did so using a number of techniques, including having a bald actor wear a fake hairpiece with a peelable scalp underneath. When Hill goes deeper below the skull, they swapped out the actor for a dummy with a hollowed out headpiece that they filled with an actual cow brain.
I hate to admit this, but one of my big suppliers on this film was a local meat market.
Hey man, do what you gotta do, as long as the meat place wasn't named Sawyer. Hill pointedly repeats to his class that the limit of life after brain death is 6 to 12 minutes. But West ain't gonna let that claim slide without some pencil heckling.
Brain death brings about an irreversible conclusion.
Joke's on you, West. Now what you gonna write with? Oh, another pencil. Joke's on me, I guess. Hill tries to continue his lesson, only to get interrupted by another snapback. So he dismisses the class and tells West to go shopping for school supplies.
I suggest you get yourself a pen.
David Gale, who Stuart Gordon compared to Boris Karloff in his appearance, doesn't get enough credit for his performance as Dr. Hill. He's a bad guy who's both authoritative and kinda creepy, like when he hits on Megan right in front of her father during a dinner together. Meg leaves this uncomfortable dinner for a study date at Dan's place, but she shoots down his attempts to study her because she's too creeped out about West living there now. I mean, the dude's so weird that even Dan's cat Rufus doesn't like him. Hey, where is that cat anyway? Could we get an extended, slightly out of focus scene where they look for him?
Rufus.
Perfect. Maybe call for him with some fun nicknames too.
Come on, you fat cat.
Lucy's a fat cat too. Their cat scan of the apartment doesn't pick anything up, so Meg sneaks into West's room o' science to see if Rufus made his way in there. Ooh, here's the thing, Meg. I've got some good news and some bad news for you. The good news is that Rufus is in here. The bad news, well, it's pretty bad. West arrives and is immediately indignant at this invasion of privacy, even though Meg had some pretty probable cause to go looking there. Really gonna check that kitty paw stand? The poor thing is obviously dead. Aren't you studying to be a doctor?
What happened?
Megan accuses Herbert West of murder, but West claims that Rufus was dead when he found him, and that he was going to inform Dan later.
You couldn't call or write a note.
I was busy pushing bodies around, as you well know, and what would a note say, Dan? Cat dead, details later?
In fact, Dan does learn details later that night, after being awoken by some crazy meowing. He follows the noises to the basement, and after a crash entrance down the stairs, he's greeted by a panicked Herbert West with an angry cat stuck to his back. This scene is a classic one, with the two of them cat hunting while the basement's only light swings around like a Brave Little Toaster character. Normally I'm not too fond of violence against cats being played for laughs, but it helps that this cat is so obviously fake. I mean, for most of the shots, there's no actual cat on screen, and when it finally does jump out, it's such an insane looking puppet that I can't get too upset about Dan pitching it into the wall. Whew, things got pretty crazy there, Dan, but I think you put him down.
Look out!
Hey, not funny, dude. Okay, I guess it was a little funny. West shows Kane his research from Switzerland, which reveals that he's learned how to beat the 6 to 12 minute time limit of brain death. Now, he wants Dan's help to finish his research.
We can defeat death.
Kane tries to argue that this is impossible, that maybe Rufus was never actually dead to begin with. But after verifying that Rufus is now 100% dead, West puts Dan's doubts to rest with a little bit of green juice and his friend, the scientific method. With just one dose of Herbert West's Dead Be Gone, Rufus is back in action. Kinda.
Don't expect it to tango. It has a broken back.
Yeah, looking much more like a mashed potato there. It's impressive nonetheless, but this is not exactly the best time for Megan to be walking in. Oof, damn West, she saw the zombie cat, dude. Looks like your little secret is out, man. Unless she and Dan can keep it a secret and not tell anyone else.
Herbert West has affected reanimation in dead animal tissue.
Dan. Dean Halsey ain't putting up with these Frankenstein tales one bit, and he gets so enraged about this inappropriate use of science that he kicks Herbert West out of the school and rescinds Dan's student loans, essentially ending his education as well. Damn, I bet Dan thought he'd be safe by getting engaged to the boss's daughter, but I guess he didn't have any luck with that old Triple H strategy. Dan talks his way into the school morgue, smuggling West in with him as well, and together, the bros look for the perfect cadaver to use as a human subject. West settles on a John Doe who arrived earlier that evening with minimal tissue damage, and as Dan records a medical entry, West administers 15 cc's of his finest glowing reagent, which, as Mr. Combs himself told me this year, is simply glow stick juice. They apparently used over 900 glow sticks for the movie's reagent. But just remember, no matter how tasty it looks,
do not drink it.
Don't eat glow sticks.
Not Kool-Aid.
Nothing happens at first, so West double doses, which, as any amateur with edibles could tell you, is a huge mistake. I mean, look at this dude, he's tripping hard, man. We get another memorable scene as this naked zombie manhandles the two med students and shows them just how defined his face nerves are. Those were accomplished in a manner similar to Dr. Gruber's exploding eyes, with inflatable bladders underneath a thin prosthetic on the actor's face. And the dude playing this muscly morgue man is Peter Kent, a 6'5" stunt performer who was also the workout partner, stunt double, and personal friend of Arnold Schwarzenegger, filling in for the Austrian on the set of Terminator, and once even being mistaken as his twin. Sorry, Artie, but Danny DeVito's your bro. It's funnier that way. Dean Halsey shows up, having caught wind of Dan's morgue visit, but it only takes a minute for him to get trampled by the naked zombie man beneath a door. NZM ends up killing the Dean after some finger biting, a crucifix toss onto a table, and finally, a bunch of wall slamming. Herbert West comes to the rescue, kinda, with an electric bone saw that he uses to kill his reanimated creation, which, remember, I'll be counting, when he rams that saw straight through the zombie's back and out the front. This kill has always stuck with me, and it was done with a simple trick. They made a chest cast of Peter Kent's torso, and then had makeup artist Anthony Dublin stick a fake bone saw with ground beef and a blood tube coming out of it through the prop chest, while Jeffrey Combs and Kent stood behind it. Dan is appropriately impressed by the practical gore, while West just wants to clean his hand off. Although things didn't go so well with the John Doe reanimation, West is eager to run another human trial.
He'd probably been dead too long. It wasn't fresh enough.
Well, good thing they've got the freshest corpse available right at their feet. Dan objects at first, but West bullies the handsome lad into helping him out. And before you can say ethically questionable, they're gearing up to raise the dead again. They inject Dean Halsey with the reagent, and 17 seconds later, that formerly dead dude opens his eyes and starts spitting out blood. Well, it's good to be back, Herb. Don't let the blood spittle tell you otherwise. Halsey's so happy he could choke someone. In fact, he could choke two people, he's so pumped to be alive again. Megan, eager to find out what's going on for herself, sneaks down to the morgue and once again makes an entrance with unfortunate timing, which scares her reanimated father into a corner. While Megan cries over the state of her dad, and West makes up some bullshit excuse for the security guard, Dan Kane collapses onto the floor in a fit of shock. There now, Dan. Eventually, you'll get used to all the crazy shit I talk you into. Dean Halsey is put in a straitjacket and placed under the care of Dr. Hill, who keeps him in his office behind a one-way mirror. And I want to give props to actor Robert Sampson for his role as Dean Halsey. It's easy to forget about this performance with all the other acting heavyweights in the cast, but the dude is basically playing two roles in this movie. And the difference between him when he's alive and him when he's reanimated really drives home how unsuccessful West's reagent reagent is. Dr. Hill wants to know why Dean Halsey is so different all of a sudden, and plans to perform a bit of brain surgery to figure it out, just as soon as he's finished hitting on Megan against the mirror. Yeah, good thing her pops is there to break that shit up. As a bereaved Megan learns from Dan that her dad's not crazy, he's just dead, Dr. Hill makes a house call to Herbert West's basement laboratory. He tells his pesky ex-student that he knows Dean Halsey is a reanimated dead man, and then tells West to hand over the reagent so he can take credit for the discovery. Gotta say, Hill, this can't have been your best plan, man. You really want to mess with this crazy mofo? Cause that's how you get a shovel to the dome, dude. After knocking him to the ground, Herbert West murders Dr. Carl Hill by means of a shovel decapitation, a brutal and drawn-out death that's accompanied by lots of squishy and scrapey sound effects. Despite having just killed a man, Herbert West doesn't think of himself as a murderer. He still thinks of himself as a scientist, and as such, he's about to science the hell out of that head by injecting it with his reagent. And hey, while he's at it, might as well inject the headless body with some life force too. After all,
Parts. I've never done whole parts.
his experiment works and Dr. Carl Hill's head comes to life, eager to have a hissy conversation wherein he's not quite able to pronounce any T sounds. Before Herbert can find out who Wes is, he's knocked out by Hill's headless body. Dan and Megan go to Dr. Hill's office so they can see her dad and try to figure out how to fix him. They end up discovering that Hill has been keeping a creeper folder on Megan, and has also been keeping himself busy by lobotomizing the reanimated Dean Halsey. Back home, West regains consciousness to find that his lab's been ransacked, and yet he's still alive, which seems a little weird to me. Why wouldn't Dr. Hill just kill Herbert West and end all his troubles right there? Dan gets home and the boys exchange info. West admits that he, whoops, killed and reanimated Dr. Hill, and Dan tells West that Hill has lobotomized Halsey and has been collecting Megan's keepsakes for creepsakes.
Hill's got this weird file on her. He's full of napkins and hair.
They make plans to stop that napkin collector, who's currently in his office rejuicing up his head. The scenes with Dr. Hill's head and body working together are another level of comedy, with Richard Band's jaunty score playing over the body's embarrassing clumsiness. It's also a lot of fun to watch them use a bunch of different techniques, 8 they claim, to portray the severed head. The most common one they used was having David Gales sit below a table with his head sticking out of a hole in a tray. To make it convincing, they glued some prosthetic severed skin to Gale's neck and covered it all up with fake blood. It made for some long and uncomfortable hours on set for David Gale, but apparently he never made any fuss about it.
He was really a trooper about all that.
Never complaining about it. And when we finished, he came up to me and he said, you know, Stuart, I want to thank you because this movie has reanimated me.
Other techniques they used included a simple prop head for when it was picked up and carried, a basic animatronic head that was little more than a glorified hand puppet, and a fake torso with a hole in it that David Gale could stick his head through. When they needed to show his headless body walking around, they used the very simple technique of having another performer wear a black hood and duck his head down as low as possible while they shot him from behind at a low angle. With enough ingenuity, anything is possible. Hill begins to command Dean Halsey using mind control, and this telepathic ability is actually a leftover from a deleted side plot that showed Dr. Hill had hypnotic powers.
Cain is dangerous. It's dangerous.
It was written to explain why Dean Halsey turned on Dan so fast, and to later explain how Hill controls a bunch of reanimated zombies, but in the end they cut it, because they realized that stuff like that doesn't need an explanation.
That was a way to explain why he could control all these zombies. Well, as it turns out, who cares?
The dark comedy continues as Hill makes his way to the morgue in a macabre disguise that somehow actually works on the security guard there. Damn, man, be better at your job.
Break time.
Break time? What? What do you call reading boudoir, dude? The film then employs even more gags for the severed head, including the ultra-simple stand just below the camera frame technique, as Hill and his body prepare to reanimate more bodies. Meanwhile, the mind-controlled reanimated Dean Halsey returns home to kidnap Megan away from Dan and take her back to the morgue. Once there, he sets her down next to Hill's head, and things get real uncomfortable real fast.
I think I've always loved you.
This whole scene is pretty intense and is one of the ways Gordon and Yuzna tried to push the envelope with this movie. But I believe that Barbara Crampton has said she was made to feel comfortable while shooting this scene, and she felt like she was in on the joke they were trying to make here. So that's definitely a real-life relief. Doesn't make it any less weird to watch though, as they try to pull off a quote-unquote visual pun. But before this head can become a cunning linguist, it's interrupted by Herbert West, who saves Megan, but also insults her in the process.
Here you are, trysting with the bubble-headed co-ed.
Listen, bud, I'm looking at two people in this movie's central relationship, and Megan is clearly not the bubble-headed one in it.
What happened?
And Barbara Crampton agrees.
So I think she's a strong character, which I also liked. She's definitely not a bubble-headed co-ed.
But even though Dan is kind of bubble-headed, I'm still a Dan fan, especially after he helps Megan out while the head scientist and his ex-student engage in a war of words.
Who's going to believe a talking head? Get a job in a sideshow.
But that talking head, oh, that's why Dan has a Talking Heads poster in his room. Of fucking course. I just thought he recognized the genius of David Byrne like I do. Anyway, the talking head tells the psycho killer that he has a plan, which is thus. Yep, a bunch of naked zombies. This armada of the Reanimated was designed by John Buechler, who made sure to give each of them a distinct look and deadly backstory. For instance, one was designed to have been run over, while another looked like he had been shot in the face with a shotgun. Bedlam breaks out as the naked Reanimations knock down Dan and Megan and hold Wes captive, all while Hill brags about having found a way to control these ex-corpses.
They give me power. Dreamed of power.
Unlimited power! This hectic scene was the last thing they shot, and it proved to be difficult for cinematographer Mac Alber to frame out all of the genitalia, since they wanted to avoid any charges of pornography.
The most important thing was not to show any frontal nudity, as it's called.
He looked kind of distraught, and I went over to Mac. I said, Mac, you all right? It's the Veenies. I see the Veenies.
I got Veenie's wagon in my shot.
And I don't know how to make them go away.
While these weenie-wagging bodies take a laser to West's head, Megan manages to break through to her father on an emotional level, which causes him to disrupt Dr. Hill's killing procedure by knocking his headless body into the hallway and headbutting his, head. As Dan tries to corral Megan out of there, and West sticks some more serum into Dr. Hill's body, Dean Halsey finishes off the reanimated Dr. Hill head, which I'll count as a kill, by squeezing it and chucking it against the wall outside. Yeah, security guard guy, you don't get paid enough to deal with this shit. Just take a sick day on this one, dude. The smooshy head thrown by Halsey there was sculpted by Anthony Dublin on set, and was pretty much just a big hamburger patty with a wig over it, which, yeah, may be a little crude, but man does it make a good splat. I won't count Hill's reanimated body as a separate kill, even though it cracks open and spawns a nasty tentacle out of its chest in reaction to the overdose West injected. They shot that intestinal tentacle grab in reverse. They started with it wrapped around Combs' neck, pulled it off of him through a hole in the wall, and then simply reversed the footage for the movie. It leaves West a little tentacle-tied as chemicals are spilled throughout the room, and although Dean Halsey helps free Megan from another attack, he is then killed again when he's ripped apart by the other reanimations all converging on his body. Rest in peace, Zombie Halsey. You came around in the end there, even if you did strip your daughter down for a severed head to harass her mere moments earlier. Before being dragged away completely, West tosses his bag with his notes inside towards the door, and Dan dutifully grabs it on his way out. He and Megan are chased by a necky zombie down the hall, but it's a second necky burnt zombie who ends up choking the shit out of Megan in the elevator. Dan grabs a fire axe and severs the zombie's barbecued arm, and they did this by having an amputee wear a prosthetic arm which was all covered up by the burn effects. As Dan tends to Megan's unconscious body, the arm keeps twitching away like an Evil Dead gag, accomplished in the very simple way of having a dude under the floor stick his arm through a hole. And no, I won't count either of those reanimated zombies in the hallway as kills. I don't know, I just feel like they're stronger than what happened to them. Dan carries his fiancée through the turmoil of the hospital and into a room where he tries to paddle her back to life, but not even a record number of verses of Staying Alive can do anything to save her, and Megan Halsey dies in the hospital room as a result of getting strangled. Damn, Dan, I'm so so sorry that your fiance's dead. Wait a minute, dead, eh? Didn't I just pick something up for that? The movie ends with Handsome Dan loading up a syringe with glowy goodness and going to administer it to his deceased fiancée Megan. Freeze frame, fade out, except the serum keep that shit glowing. How many people died in Reanimator in spite of or because of Herbert West? Let's find out at the numbers. By my count, there were 8 confirmed deaths in Reanimator, and the victims consisted of 2 living women, 2 living men, and 4 reanimated men, giving us a pie chart with some stripey dudes. Cool! With a runtime of 86 minutes, that left us with a kill on average every 10.75 minutes. I'll give the golden chainsaw for coolest kill to the reanimated morgue man. There are many good kills in this movie, but this one has always stuck with me the most. Just a naked zombie getting bone sawed through the back? What's not to love about that sentence? Dull machete for lamest kill will go to the patient Dan loses right off the bat, who I'm not even fully comfortable putting on the count, but I guess it happened during the movie's runtime, so whatever. And that's it. Reanimator was shot in just 3 weeks and released unrated in 1985. It's a speedy little cult classic that delighted many a critic, including Roger Ebert and Pauline Kael. And if D.P. Mac Ahlberg is to be believed, it also impressed someone very special to me.
I was doing a movie a few years ago where David Bowie was one of the actors, and David came over to me and said, Mac, I heard you shot Reanimator. That's my favorite movie.
Wow, that is fucking awesome. Take it from me and David, it is definitely worth checking out. We'll look at the sequel, Bride of Reanimator, next week. But until then, I'm James A. Janice. This has been the Kill Count. Thanks a lot for watching this week's Kill Count. Another huge thanks to Movement for pulling through and rescuing this Kill Count. Seriously, it would have sucked to have to release this demonetized. This was a lot of work, man. So much blur effect. Also want to thank some patrons like Jared Seda, Richard Gilbert, Trey Gilbert, Blaz Vosti, Emma Lewis, and Bram Conboy. Thanks everyone, be good people.